BA program at SSAA. She's been teaching at Sushant School of Art and Architecture since the past 6 years. Prior to joining Sushant, she was a visiting faculty at EMA Conservation Program, School of Planning and Architecture, Delhi. She has extensive research experience with agencies such as INTAC, American Institute of Indian Studies, Center of Art and Archaeology, Getty Seismic Adobe Project Initiative, Getty Conservation Institute, LA, Architectural Conservation Research Laboratory, University of Pennsylvania, PA, etc., etc. And the list is very, very long. She has an MSc in Historic Preservation from University of Pennsylvania, USA, with specialization in architecture material conservation. And she's done a BArch from Pune University. She has she has worked on several conservation projects in India and the United States. She has, this is a very interesting part, and that's why she has done a lot of research in this area, and she has a keen interest in historic building material, investigative and documentation tools for heritage buildings and sites. And that's what we want to bring into this construction technologies, which we completely miss, that there is a back, present, past, future. So she was awarded the INTAC Research. Amrita, let me just give her, share her awards.
And this is not the right bio. I made a very short one. This is like it sounds like I don't know what. So I think we can. It's fine.
Okay.
We're
Yeah.
good. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
It's just becoming too
Fine.
long.
Sorry. Fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah, yeah,
Sorry. So, yeah, quickly. So let me just read out your award and then we are going to stop. So she was awarded the INTAC Research Scholarships, and there you go.
Perfect.
You can, I will present. Bhavna, you
Sorry,
want to?
problem from my end. I'm sorry, Bharat is just getting pressed unnecessarily.
Yeah, yeah.
I just like to come in. Bhavna.
Yeah.
Yes. What? Oh, you're asking me if I want to comment?
To our construction syllabi. She can tell us, she tells us alternate methods. She's been teaching this in her master's courses, but she's also, I mean, and also this expertise. Remember, yesterday we were talking about when we were discussing with Aarti Mathur, who was from Pradeep Saxena, that you know, the use of Lakhori bricks. I think Bhavna is going to go into more detail and academic premise for that, and a method. I assume a method to practice this inside your inside the subject, inside the teaching of the subject. So over to you, Bhavna.
Thank you, Amrita, Aruna. Hello to everyone who is present here today. I've been asked to be this resource person for traditional building materials, processes, methods as an alternative approach. Well, I don't like the alternate approach, but we'll discuss that later. Just like all of us, I also didn't learn about these traditional materials in college, you know, when I was going through my BArch program. And I was also busy learning, you know, modern materials, concrete, and, you know, whatever was very, very current and contemporary. So my journey with this so-called material, traditional materials, began when I started working with heritage buildings back in 2000. Because we were always measure drawing the buildings. We never had the documentation drawings. And to do that, one had to go into the depth of how the building was put together. You can't draw a section till you understand how it was put together. So, you know, you had to go through all the basic layers, wall thicknesses and stuff like that. So to put together that set and to analyze the problem and to propose the solution, measure drawing was the basic thing. I then got my formal training in materials and scientific behavior during my time at University of Pennsylvania. In classrooms as well as labs, I did explore materials and their scientific properties as well. Whereas students, you know, we were taking water absorption readings for 2 minutes, 6 minutes, 20 minutes, going to the labs in the middle of the night, you know, going from your hostels. So it was a fun experience, you know, where you get into the detail of building materials, not just histories of building materials. So that was a little bit of background of how I started getting more involved into the traditional building materials. Anyways, this talk isn't about me, but the point that I want to make is that there is no straightforward course available for traditional materials in India and also abroad. They do small courses, which we will discuss later.
Sorry, Gayatri Bhutani, please stop presenting. Aruna, please read again.
Sure. So there are no direct courses, where you say I want to do a 6 months course on traditional materials and then I'm going to be an expert. You don't have that. That is not available. We don't have the luxury of that kind of a course available to us. But then there are several other ways that we can employ to learn about them. Where is the presentation? Could we have the presentation, please?
She has to represent. It's gone, pinned to a different screen. Just restarting. Gayatri Bhutani, can you please switch off your mic?
Just a minute. I'm going to represent. 1 minute.
Okay. Please go back to number 2, please. Go back a little bit. Yeah, further back. One more. Yes. So, I'm going to start this talk by looking at the traditional knowledge systems more than the traditional building systems or the traditional process and methods only relating to the building. So let's call a bigger umbrella. Let's say that a bigger umbrella which says traditional knowledge systems, because amongst many other things, it includes traditional materials and techniques as well. These knowledge systems don't only apply to buildings, but they are a way of living. Can we go to the next slide? Why am I showing this slide now? The talk is about building materials, and the relevance of this is that these are our knowledge systems. That were, some are ancient, some are medieval, but these have been passed on to us from generations to generations. And everything new and exciting is not always time tested. We are all going back to Ayurveda. We are all going back to yoga. Not just us, but everyone globally. Next, please. I don't like plastic bags, and I think many of us don't either. And also, it's scientifically proven what it's doing to our climate and to the continent. To the earth. This is our grandfather's jhola on the left side. In the middle is the plastic bag, which have now been banned, and on the right side is a big way, in which the totes have come back, or the grandfather's jhola is now making it back. So, some of the traditional systems that are coming back to the current lifestyle. Next, please. This is the more rationalized traditional, as I would like to call it. Next, please. On the left is a very, very basic thali, that is again, that we use in our everyday life. Then for centuries, or in the middle, maybe say 19th, 20th century, we are doing a lot of fast food. And again, look at this thing on the right, which shows you that it has also been rationalized. It's not the same anymore. But we know that fast food wasn't good enough for us, and we are coming back. Next, please. Now we are going to go to the traditional materials actually, and let's see why we discontinued using these, and why have these become an alternate approach now. And traditional by definition is existing or a part of a tradition that has been long established. Next slide, please. So in India, tradition and vernacular are somehow, there are some certain overlaps also, and vernacular by all means is smaller residential buildings. They are not monumental or public buildings, and we'll see a lot of overlaps between traditional and vernacular buildings. Go on to the next one, please. In India, the primary or basic materials that we've been using traditionally are earth, stone, brick, wood, bamboo, lime as a binder or as a binder material or a cementing material. And for finishes, we've been using white washes and mud finishes and several other things as well. But this list just shows you a primary basic methodology that we've been using. But with the Industrial Revolution and with the British coming in, you know, when the concrete was also found, the newer materials are concrete, steel, glass, and many synthetic man-made materials. Mortar is now the Portland cement, not lime anymore. And for finishes, we've been using terrazzo, stone, tiles, pigmented cement, and many other things. Next slide, please. Let's see why the traditional materials were so popular. And I think most of the apart from the cities, they are still very popular. They are very low. So they are actually, the traditional materials are mostly the local materials. They are the materials at hand, which are very easily available. You don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to go out of state to get it. You don't have to go out of country to import it. So these are very locally available. The thermal properties are such because they're locally available, and we have the traditional knowledge system that that when we use that and we put together a building, it's always very thermally conducive for the people. So obviously there are no hidden costs. You don't need extra heating, you don't need extra cooling. There is always also a comfort to handle these materials by the locals who are using this. So it becomes a craft also for them, you know, and then they start to explore it more. If we see the traditional buildings, there is always in many cases that I have seen and I have read about, there is a resistivity to disasters that a particular area is prone to. We'll obviously go through that later also. There is a longevity to these materials. They don't just disappear with time, and they don't start deteriorating with time. And obviously they're very economical because you're not going very far to get it, and there is local know-how to construct it. And also the repair methods are very simple for these buildings, but still we choose not to use them. Why? There are certain limitations, I would say. Of course, we can't achieve a lot of heights that we are aiming for and the spans that we are aiming for. Brick is causing a lot of pollution. That is a very current topic, but you know, again, people are looking for alternates for that as well. Stone coring, yes, stone is obviously going to get depleted, and you know, we're not going to have stone forever. And then there are new fancy materials which we all love using. Next slide, please. I want to start with a very simple, understated material. You know, we use it all the time. It's present everywhere, but we don't give this material enough credit. Next, Aruna, please. Brick is in India. Brick is pretty much found everywhere. You know, when you start from north to south or east to west. I like Aruna mentioned in the bio, I received a scholarship to study Lakhori brick. And I surveyed with some of my colleagues. I surveyed Haryana, Punjab, and Delhi. And you know, this we overlaid the locations of brick with the soil that we were finding, you know, from the Survey of India maps. And you know, it is very obvious that you know, wherever there is this alluvial soil belt, we are finding brick over there, the same places. You know, so excuse me. So people are not going very far traditionally, you know, to fetch their building materials. They are using whatever is present at hand and using it to construct their buildings, which they live in and which they use for any other functions. So since the survey was primarily in North India, I didn't go too much into the South, but it's kind of obvious there as well. Next slide, please. So, of course, if we don't go into the archaeology part, you know, I'm starting from sort of a medieval period. We had Lakhori brick, and this is not a standard size that we are looking at. This is a very generic size. And for example, this 95 could range from 80 to 110. This 190 could range from 190 to 210, and 35 could be 45 as well. So there are a lot of variations to this Lakhori as well, but this has been very well documented now, and it's been published also. And on the right side, what you see is a modular brick that came in with the British. British tried to standardize the brick that we were using. Excuse me. Next, please. Why the Lakhori brick became suddenly so popular in around 10th to 12th century was the main reason was that the Trabeate system of construction was not very. They were so. With the Ghurian invasion of India, there was more the intent was to build more massive buildings with less stone, because they wanted to go in for an arcuate system. An arcuate system does not support stone. It supports brick. So that's why this started becoming very, very popular, the brick as a building material, during around 12th century, and then it was very popular till present day also. Go to the next slide. So if you see, this is a miniature painting from Agra Fort, and from Akbarnama. It shows how Lakhori brick, because that is the only thing that was present at that time, with lime mortar, is being used to construct a wall. And it was used in structural elements such as load-bearing walls, domes, vaults, which forms the premise of the arcuate system set with lime mortar. It was also used for non-structural elements such as flooring, stairs, minarets, crenellations, and other landscape elements as well. Brick was either plastered or exposed with nice pointing. In mortar, surkhi or powdered brick was also used as a pozzolan material, which we still use till now. Many of us don't even know why we use it, but we do. And it was all started around 12th century circa. Next one, please. We mostly underestimate, brick, and we think that, it can be used for walls and maybe window openings, sills and lintels. But the arcuate system very well explains how these things were very nicely, used for these domes and all the spanning system as well, all the roofing system. Next, please. Then it evolved from there, and it, during the British period, you can see it is still being used very, very beautifully. And the method has changed slightly from, the cusped arches or the foliated arches to much simpler. I would say simpler. It's not so ornate. Maybe they didn't have the craftsmen. I don't know. So it changes to this then. Next, please. Let's go a little bit deeper into the construction of brick buildings. This is from James Skinner's album, on, again, something is happening.
Your presentation.
It's disappeared.
Aruna, please read again.
Yeah, reconnecting the network. Somebody else want to
please remove people, yeah, which are disturbing.
1 minute. Let me redo this.
No worries.
Gayatri Bhutani is presenting.
Sorry.
Hi. Is it visible?
Absolutely. Thank you, Aruna. Yeah, so going a little bit deeper into the brick construction. Also, let me just put a disclaimer here that I'm not using any scientific facts here. It's mostly from my personal research and some readings that I've been doing. Yes, so go to the next slide, Aruna, please. So brick, mostly when we see brick, we try and see, like, we envision it as a exposed brick building. But this is a photograph. This is a sketch from Ebacott's book, and this is the compound wall of Taj Mahal. So brick was very, very commonly used as a filler material also, when you didn't want to show it off, because I don't think it was people really wanted to show marble or stone as the main building material. They filled the brick inside and clad it with stone. Next one, please. This is brick as a filler material. This is near Humayun's tomb, where you can see the cladding has come off, and inside again it shows that there is tiny Lakhori brick present there. Go to the next one. The load-bearing walls at Qudsiya Garden in Delhi show beautiful exposed brick, and I don't know if this doesn't change your heart, what will, because this is really a beautiful example. Somebody has tried to put the plaster on it, but it was never meant to have plaster on it. It was exposed brick building, this one. Next one, please. Then there is another type, load-bearing exposed brick walls with plaster on it. So maybe the quality wasn't that great, or people were very good at lime plastering. So maybe that is the reason that there were some buildings were plastered as well. So you see a variety in usage of brick. I'm talking about the traditional brick here, which is in filler, which is as a filler material, which is as an exposed brick, and which is also as a plastered brick. Next, please. And let's not forget that brick is such a versatile material that, it's not just a simple rectangular form. It could be molded, it could be chiseled, and then there are glazed bricks as well. These are I think the top example is from the Kalai temple, and the bottom two are also from somewhere in Haryana. I can't remember where. The right one is a British period building, below right. Let's go to the next one. Brick, when truly adapted by a culture or a region, it has adapted very well to also provide resistance. This is a section that I really wanted to show that, flat roofs are also possible with brick and using wood or some other composite materials. So, you can't just say that brick will not work for a flat roof. It will only work if you make arches or walls or a dome. This is a building, a very, very beautiful building, a chatta in Narnaul in Haryana. Next one, please. So yeah, I was just talking about, when cultures truly adapt brick, this is the lower three photographs are from Kashmir, they are from Srinagar. And brick has been really adapted very well to provide resistance. And in this case, case of Kashmir, this shows a Dhaji Dwari technique where, brick has been used in combination with wood and it provides seismic resistivity because this area is earthquake prone. The top image shows that the battered walls that help in combating the seismic loads during the earthquakes. So, there is a variety. I lost you, Aruna, again, because it's very tiny. I can't really see.
Sorry for disturbing, but the presentation is not visible on the screen. And is Gayatri Bhutani a registered participant? If not, please attend to that.
Yes, Srijan.
Bhavna, would you want to? I mean, what is happening actually? Because when I'm doing the presentation, I cannot see.
No, I'm
So-
sorry. Just we are being intruded upon.
Okay.
So if Gayatri Bhutani is not a registered participant, please, is she a registered participant is the question.
No, she's not. So
Kindly remove her then,
yes.
because she's disrupting the presentation.
She's been removed a couple of times, but she's coming back continuously. And now that she's
Again, I want to
I
request.
think Bhavna needs to speak to her then. Probably she's a fan of Bhavna who wants to make it.
Yes.
Sorry, Bhavna.
She wants to make me panic, and just like lose it all. But it's okay.
Sorry about that.
No, don't worry. I mean, it's all good. So yeah, I was just talking about the lower three slides where Dhaji Dwari technique is shown, and where you can see the bands of the wood bands are present within the brickwork, and the upper photograph shows a mill in Kashmir, which has where the walls are slightly sloping and they are staggered or corbelled, as you may. What are these doing to the Kashmiri buildings? These are actually helping they provide resistivity to the earthquakes. Next one, please. And this is another building right there in Srinagar, which is made out of concrete with sloping roof, thankfully, some sensibility to the climate, while the cement, is plastered with cement. This will go through immense freeze-thaw cycles and literally kill the inhabitants inside. I'm not joking. It will really kill the inhabitants because it's going to get so cold, and the freeze-thaw cycle will actually damage the building so badly that this is not going to last. If just from the previous slides, I mean, you can see the traditional knowledge is being used so well, and suddenly somebody comes and says, I want to make a concrete building. And this is what happens. So eventually we'll see in a few years from now how these buildings will shape up. But this will be a very, very big disaster. Next one, please. I'm going to stop talking about brick for now, and let's just think about brick as a building material. In present circumstances, after showing these few slides, do you think that you will be able to make your walls out of concrete building? A brick building, roofing, combined with other materials like wood maybe or concrete, using a framework of concrete. Openings, you can do sills and lintels with brick. Flooring, yes. Non-structural elements, yes. Decorative elements, yes. Why are we not using it? So the basic idea here is to just open up your minds and just look at what we've been doing in the past and why have we stopped doing it. We are still able to do all this. We are still able to achieve it. There are no shortcuts when you want to have a good building which is thermally conducive, and also your clients would be happier, or the students who you are actually giving this knowledge to will be happier to have these options. So try asking these questions to yourself, or try asking these together with your students, who will ultimately give this to your clients. Will it last me? Will this be thermally conducive? Yes. Will it be resistant against earthquakes? Yes, if we do employ the traditional techniques. We don't have to bring in a structural engineer to tell us, or an expert to tell us that yes, this will last me for ages. Does it require intensive maintenance? No, it is a very, very maintenance free material. You only need to repoint it. Is it easily available? I think so. Do you think so? At least I think so. Are there alternates? Yes, there are alternates as well. Will I get workers to execute or implement it? Absolutely. So I think I'm going to check all the boxes and say, yes, I can totally use it in today's circumstances. Why are we losing this this is on the verge of being lost. It's not completely lost, but it will go away, just like others have. Next one, please. But I think some people will agree that in the past there has been some I would say a group of more sensitive people who are still not ready to leave this. The left is my parents' house, which we built together, and it uses framework of RCC and has a lot of exposed brick that has been used in this building. On the right is an award-winning building by Anagram Architects. And look at the beautiful brick patterns. Do you think it is not inspired by what I was showing you? Look at the decorative patterns that have been used in the past. So, brick has that versatility. Next, please. And again, I would like to call it rationalized traditional rather than an alternate approach, because, it's still not gone completely. So it's still very, very present. And look at this building by Ashish Ganju. And it's a very it's a recent building, and brick has been beautifully used along with RCC. Next one, please. American Institute of Indian Studies, and you can also see some domes being constructed here. I'm not sure if it's in brick completely or it uses RCC as well for the dome, but otherwise it's an RCC frame building, and it's extremely sustainable. I would say these materials, that's the word I was kind of trying not to use, because then you get pulled into whether it's green by X standards or Y standards, but we don't need to answer that question to anyone. This is for our sake that we are doing it. So this is another very sustainable example. Now I will start using that term. Next one, please. As far as roofing of brick is concerned, these are also very contemporary examples. Or in Auroville, a lot of experimentation is going on, and our students also go there, our faculty also goes there, and I'm sure many other people go there to learn about this. So roofing, this type of roofing is extremely helpful in the kind of climate that we are living in. I'm talking about the dry, hot, slightly humid kind of a climate, where RCC slabs don't work very well, and it traps a lot of heat, and then obviously we have to install air conditioning. Next, please. Another example of roofing material right here, brick as a roofing material. So what I'm trying to show you here is that if you don't know these things, you are not going to be able to transfer this knowledge to your students or to your clients when you're practicing. So please go ahead and explore each and every material and have those options with you. Next one, please. I think I will. The only thing that brick needs is pointing, actually. When you are doing an exposed brickwork, see the picture on the left and on the right, the only difference is you're seeing all the cracks. And when people say brick will crack, brick will deteriorate, it really doesn't. It's not true. It's been scientifically proven. And on the left, as you can see, the cracks are showing because the pointing has been lost with time. Things weather, things age, especially these building materials. So you just have to maintain them. So look at the image on the right. It's been pointed very well. And yeah, it's going to last. I don't know how long though. Next one, please. These are some of the alternates that I was talking about. On the left is the fly ash brick, and on the right is the hollow concrete block. But I'm not sure about these materials. So, it will be very, very good if somebody, takes these as research projects and start to look at comparing the Lakhari to modular to the machine made brick and with these, and their properties. And then maybe we can have a scientific way of showing the clients, that what is good for their building and what is not. Of course, it is a matter of time. When you want to save time, you say, okay, I'm going to go ahead with this. But, in the long run, is it worth it? Next one, please. So brick will last centuries if maintained well, especially if it's regularly pointed. Please, it needs just your love and care. So I think I would just say go ahead and promote it as much as you want. There's another material that we don't talk about very much, especially in certain parts of the world or maybe in the cities. But this has been even used before the brick actually came into existence, because the fired bricks were not very common earlier. Let's go to the next slide. This map. So this map shows it's mapped the earthen sort of buildings in the whole world. Basically, earth is another such material that is extremely versatile, and it's used to make very well performing buildings. Of course, we have to make sure what climate we are using it in, and whether the use is external or internal. For example, it's a great material for dry climates. It's obvious, right? Because it can't stand a lot of rain. And as you can see, in India, we've been using adobe and rammed earth for centuries. Next, please. This is a painting that illustrates the use of rammed earth from the medieval period. And next one, please. What is rammed earth? Rammed earth is a technique that has been used for centuries. I have seen buildings in Ladakh that have stood the weathering of time for example, more than 1,000-year old. So on the left, what this shows is the image on the left shows is the equipment that is used for the rammed earth construction. And on the right, it shows is a very, very contemporary sort of equipment. Again, how you can do rammed earth in current times. The one on the left is a drawing by John Harrison, who worked extensively in Ladakh. And, he was documenting these techniques. So how are these walls built? It is a method where the walls are put or built in phases. Earthen material is put into the framework, and then it is rammed. And then the framework is lifted when the material dries out. And then, similarly, more, framework keeps on going. I think I lost it.
Yeah, Bhavna, we couldn't hear you for a minute.
Okay, I lost my connection for a minute. So it is a method where the walls are built in phases or stages by putting it in a framework and ramming it and then lifting it for the next layer to be installed. And it's a very, very stable method, and the slenderness ratio of the walls has been tested. It's very, very structurally stable also. The next method that earth uses, in India we've been using is the adobe blocks. It's a very different composition from the rammed earth rammed earth construction that I just showed you. But what it provides is the ease of construction, and it's also from the same region. These two examples that I've just showed you are from the same region of Ladakh. Go to the next one, please. This is a building from Ladakh. It's a small village temple in a village called Tia. And what this shows is the earthen construction that this building has used, and it's used it's a rammed earth building. It's about 800 years old, this building. So in the front you can see all the detailing. It uses wood as a support system. It has walls made out of rammed earth, but it's sort of a composite building which uses two materials. And you can see that all the beams are being projected out. And on the right image, you can see this is the side of the building. This is the front on the left, and on the right side is the side of the building. It's a single-storied building, rammed earth building. It uses timber as a support material, and there's a parapet also present on the top, which is very nicely detailed using some stone coping. So another material that comes here into existence is the stone. Go to the next one, please. This is the inside of the porch, or the beams that were sort of projecting out when we were looking at the previous image. Next, please. The most interesting part, I have documented this building because we were going to do some conservation procedures here. And trust me, this building has lasted 800 years old, but it's only started to deteriorate in last 50 years because of the recent climate change and the precipitation that this area started receiving. So in order to repair it, we had to obviously figure out how it was put together. And so, that's the most interesting part for me, the investigations, and we went into the terrace, we dug a hole, and we figured out all the roofing layers, that how this building was put together, and some from the bottom. And then you were able to get these thicknesses. So I think this shows a very, very beautiful traditional building, a building, that has been put together using rammed earth, wood, and some stone. So this section was documented, and then we were able to actually make the roofing again, because it was very deteriorated, and the rainwater had actually spoiled the roofing layers. So if you see that the lower, I'm sure you just saw the previous slide where I showed you all the beams. So all the beams are at the bottom. Then there are several layers of mud, and it keeps the building very warm during the colder weather. Next, please. And recently, what is happening is, after that roof repair was done, I went back again in 2011 when the flash floods had taken place. We were doing an assessment of heritage buildings there. We had some observations there, and these two examples are from after the flash floods, and you can see that these buildings are made out of concrete, which is not a very traditional material in Ladakh, and which is pains. This material, when you live inside these buildings, it's a very, very uncomfortable material for this region. The houses that were given to the public after the flash floods, they were given for free for many people. People used to still sleep outside of those buildings. They wouldn't go and sleep inside. During the day it was okay, but at night they used to come out because it was so terribly cold. So how damn uncomfortable, So I'm just showing you that we are looking at some buildings from the past and some current. Next one, please. This is also right after the flash floods. There is this is a building owner on the left side. He had an old building. He constructed a new building on the right side, and thinking that concrete building is very fashionable, or it's very current, or I don't want to repair my old building. He also moved into this new building, spent a few years there, and now he's using the building on the left again. What does these kind of things really prove? These only go to prove that these materials have stood the test of times, and these are locally available. There is know-how to actually do these, and we are all returning to what is the traditional or the past.
I think there was some connection issue. Bhavna ma'am, I think, lost the connection.
Okay. We'll wait for her to join back. Oh,
Yeah,
she's
she's
just coming back. No, we'll wait. No problem. This is part and parcel of our present platform. Not an issue at all. Welcome back, Bhavna.
Sorry, it never happens, but
Doesn't matter. Okay.
yeah.
You continue.
Let's I think we go to the next one. So this is sort of a comparative analysis between the new and the old and concrete. I think I'm actually showing how much I don't like concrete, but I really love concrete also. So next one. So this is another example right from Ladakh, in 2011, when people started using, because of this climate change, there is more rainfall. So they want to find out means and ways of combating the rainfall. So they started putting metal roof. And again, it started to become the precipitation and the condensation inside the roof is actually causing a lot of damage. So basically the design adaptation has to come in now. It's not about just discarding that material, but how can we adapt to the climate change and still use those older material. So it has more to do with the design and a little bit of technology and the materials. How do you stabilize earth, so that it withstands that kind of climate? And it's not a heavy rainfall, it's slight change in the climate. Next, please. One of my favorite, very, very favorite buildings. And this now is a 1,000+ year old. And it still is very, very beautiful. People use it. It is a small temple again. And you can see the rear side is slightly higher than the front side. It's because it houses a large image of Buddha. There is a clay statue inside. It has lasted for many, many years, as you can see, centuries actually. But the lower side of this building, which is like a new retaining wall, has been installed here because the soil was coming out to be very loose. Again, it's because of the recent changes. Last 50 to 100 years, these changes have been documented. So, and also if you notice that this has been done very sensitively using mud bricks. And but recently this new structure has come in, the building in the front. And I don't know I'm sort of speechless when I look at this 1,000-year-old building, the retaining wall, and something very new coming in here, right here. Obviously, it has the consent of the lamas and everyone. And then this is what comes in. We'll see how long this will last and how much people will use it, or ultimately will it become just a storeroom of something. Go to the next slide. Aruna, sorry, can you go back again? I wanted to say one thing. If you see, the building is not very straight. It has battered walls. It has inclined walls. They are not very straight. These are called the battered wall, and it was very, very achievable in rammed earth. And it really protects you from the earthquakes. The building doesn't topple over. The building doesn't collapse. It sort of stands there and during an earthquake. Next, please. The building also, the Ladakhi buildings, they're the ones that I have seen, documented and read about. I also wrote my master's thesis on one of these buildings. What you notice here is that there is, again, there's inherent traditional knowledge passed on from generation to generation, which shows seismic resistivity. Again, there was no rainfall then, it was only snow, but earthquakes were still very, very common. They were very mild, but they are becoming more intense now. If you see, there are wooden beams present at every few meters, and they tend to slide and move when there is an earthquake. So the building again doesn't collapse or topple over. And the image on the right shows you again these ring beams. Sometimes the floor beams are also used as ring beams, and then they provide seismic resistivity. Next, please. Did I change your heart a little bit? Do you like earthen buildings more now? I really have a very a big fascination for this kind of architecture actually, and I really like. Like I told you, I've been working there since 2004 and made many trips and documented many buildings, seen the deterioration of many buildings, seen concrete come up. But again, I wonder whether this concrete will last there, or will people go back to what they were using. And we can see that it's happening. Again, I would like to ask you some questions here, or something for you to think about, whether you would like to for example, if you were in this particular area, I'm not saying you start building walls of mud in Delhi, but students will go to places and you will go to places, and be constructing these buildings. So would you consider this as a traditional material? Would you make walls out of this? Would you do roofing, say, combined with wood? Would you have openings, that are made in these buildings, flooring, non-structural elements? And yes, do you think it's going to last you? These have lasted for 1,000+ years, more than any other buildings. These are almost like, archaeological remains now, but very, very living building. People are still using it. Is it thermally conducive? Yes. I mean, more than anything else in the, yes, Saloni, yes, absolutely. Does it provide resistance to earthquakes? If we don't learn from these, then I don't know what we are going to learn from. Intensive maintenance, now, yes, it's going to require a little bit of maintenance, but again, it's not very intensive. Are there alternate available? One second. Oh, I'll just have to, 1 second. Sorry about that. Yeah, and there is still the local know-how is still available. It's very easy to maintain, but yes, the climate changes, like I was just mentioning. So maybe we'll have to adapt to it and improvise it, not change it completely. We don't need to change anything completely. Next one, please. This is slightly out of context, but I thought this I should put in here because in Africa also there is a lot of earthen construction, rammed earth construction, and this is their way of modernizing. They're still using it, but finishes have changed a little bit. But as you can see, it's very, very beautiful, and it's again stands the test of times. Next, please. There are some example of Aruna. You can keep going slowly. These are some buildings by DD Contractor, very well here in India, in Himachal Pradesh, where we do get rainfall also. So she's managed to make these buildings and make it work. Next one, please. You can always stabilize the soil or the earth that you are using, and you can have design elements. You can have proper slopes, so that your building doesn't get damaged. So you don't have to worry about whether you're using soil or earth or stone. We can make it work. This is also DD Contractor inside of a building. Hassan Fati, of course, we all know. Thanks, Aruna. A lot of domes are also in use here. Next, please. More Hassan Fati for you. Excellent construction, especially for slightly arid climates, not so much for rainfall. Next, please. Alpi skilled laborers are available. You'll be amazed. Alpi just put up a question. I mean, I do like this to be interactive actually. Skilled laborers are available, especially the region that I'm talking about. And they're not afraid to learn. Some of them have gone from Bihar and other areas in the east and north. They are also learning these techniques. So after the flash floods, Seeds was working there. Many other organizations were working there. And initially they said we are going to do some newer construction, but then eventually they realized that it's not working. People were sleeping outside. Then people were trained. These laborers were trained, and they were very happy to learn. Some were skilled, were already existing, and others were trained. There's no harm. Why are we why do we shirk from training? We have to do that. Next, please. No, it's not very expensive also. At least for the examples that I showed you, not expensive. Hunar Shala is taking a lead, in making mud bricks, and they're also restoring buildings. They're also going up to Yemen to do it, some in Africa as well, right here from India in Gujarat. Next, please. These are not earthen architecture examples, but these are some examples that I came across, and I thought, Anupma Kundu also comes as visiting and is a juror for SSA. She has explored earthen bricks, earthen tiles, and fired earth in many other forms. So you can see these roofs and other buildings by her. Next, please. Bamboo being used in Pradeep Sajadeva's design. This is earth is sort of over. We are going on to the next one now. These are some examples of contemporizing or using traditional materials in today's lifestyle and current situations. Next one, please. Bamboo, more Pradeep Sachdeva. I think we had somebody from their office yesterday. Anil Lawal has very sensitively used stone and bamboo as well. Next. I'm not talking about stone today. Some examples from outside of India, Vietnam. Next, Aruna. Sanjay Prakash. Some examples from his buildings. I didn't want to talk. See, he also talked about concrete-less buildings. I think I would like our students to actually try some of those, given an option, and not just talk about everything that is current advanced. We of course have to learn that as well, but let's not forget what was there. Next, please. Some examples from Rajasthan. Next. it's happening, you know, that's what I'm trying to show you. More bamboo, very contemporary, very simple buildings. Next, please, from Japan. More contemporary practices right here in India are also doing it. Sirish Berry has been doing it. Christopher Benninger also works with materials very well, locally available at hand. Maybe not so much traditional practices, but you know, if we had the know-how, we should. Next, please. This is one of the last materials that I'm going to talk about, and I wouldn't say it's a traditional material as far as Indian context is concerned. One second, I have to look at something from my notes also. 1 second. It's not traditional and it's not from India. You know, it was not found here. It was not made here. It's sort of a transnational cultural exchange for us. You know, it came with the British. It's a material that was brought to India with British and then used very successfully in large public buildings. And here are some examples that I will show you. I'm actually calling it a traditional material now because it's not very industrial and it uses a lot of natural materials. It's not a synthetic material. So I wouldn't say it's the same as earth or brick, but it's not so far away from it as well. Next, please. This is the latest image of terrazzo showing a big comeback. You know, we had sort of forgotten about this material for a little bit of time, but it's making a very big comeback. And we had lost all the trainers, we had lost the craftsmen, but it's being revived right now. Next, please. A colleague of mine and I wrote a paper on terrazzo. We were exploring some terrazzo during the British period, and it's when it started to come in because people are facing problems on how to conserve it or what to do with the cracks now, what to do with the deteriorated terrazzo. So, this just triggered an idea for us, and we said, why don't we just investigate it a little bit more in the Indian context? So this building is Teen Murti Bhavan, and next, please. And it shows some very beautiful terrazzo. We just went into details of the aggregates, the color, and the size of aggregate and that kind of stuff for the paper. But this is just not about that. Next, please. Another room in the same building that shows terrazzo, details of terrazzo, and it was done in combination with cement. It's not just terrazzo; it's a combination of cement and terrazzo. Next, please. This is All India Radio building. I'm talking about public buildings right now, but I'm going to come down to residential or more, smaller scale building. But this is how, terrazzo actually made it into India with larger public buildings and then into smaller residential smaller residential buildings. This is All India Radio building, also terrazzo. If you see the image on the left, completely looks like if it were stone, granite and maybe some other yellow stone. And on the right, I think it's amazing what the terrazzo can do, the sensibilities and the workmanship. Next, please. This is Sir Sobha Singh's house or the Hungarian Cultural Center, which uses beautiful, colorful terrazzo in Delhi. Sorry, all these examples are from Delhi for terrazzo. We did not go elsewhere for this. Next, please. So, when we were doing the investigation, we were looking at all the details of the color and we were trying to color match it, look at the problems, the cracks, which we are not talking about here. But, when you're looking for a material, when you're doing research, you have to go into depths of these details. Next, please.
It's bandwidth. Yeah.
Hi, Rajiv.
Hi, how am I?
It's okay. Another example of the turn of the century in 1950s is the American Embassy, when the terrazzo left the floors and it became a cladding material. And these little screens that you see here are, it's not a traditional material, but it was a very big material during the 1950s or the turn of the century for the mid-century buildings in India. Next, please. And these are the examples that I really love. These are from Delhi, Daryaganj. And two of our students are doing some really great research, and they call themselves Deco Delhi. And these photographs are from them. And if you see, terrazzo was very, very generously used in the buildings after those uses, after their use as the public buildings, because the know-how came, the craftsmen were trained, and this is a versatile material. Next, please. This is a building in Chandni Chowk, also terrazzo. If you see the courtyard. Next, please. Stairs in terrazzo. Well, they do have some cracks and some weathering, but leave it to us to repair it. Next, please. What terrazzo, I like to call it a natural material, though we do it's formed by using man-made interventions, but it's natural because it uses a lot of leftover stone, and then you mix it with a cementing material. You don't have to always go in for cement. You can also use lime or white cement, if you may. There is a flexibility in design. There is durability in high footfall settings. You can't be always using stone, and stone, you will run out of stone. That's why we are going in for synthetic materials. Why not use this? It is low maintenance, it's cost effective, it's very, very hygienic because it's non-porous. It will not absorb water. So what I'm trying to tell you here is that all the industrial materials, or everything that came with concrete is not it is not very traditional, but it still can be continuously used. We don't have to deter from using it. Next, please. This is a blog from Bharat Flooring and Tiles. When we were doing the research, we came across this very nice blog that my colleague helped me find, actually. And they are blogging about terrazzo every day. There is Art Deco Mumbai, who they talk about terrazzo. The Deco Delhi students are talking about terrazzo. It's making a comeback in a very, very big way, and it's a very, very reliable material. It's a very forgiving material. It will last you for a long, long time. Next, please. And these Bharat Tiles, the company is also actually encouraging people to use it by showing some examples. Next, Aruna, can we go to the next one? It calls it the terrazzo trend. So these are the contemporary buildings where terrazzo is being used in recent times. This is a building in Goa. Next. Yeah, I mean, it looks really cute, fancy, contemporary. Next. It's not traditional material like other traditional materials, but it is a very sensible material to use. There is an organization called National Terrazzo and Mosaic Association. It's based in America, and it gives you a lot of literature on terrazzo. It could be a very, very good teaching, learning material, and they have lots of workshops as well. And they actually give you step-by-step procedures of how to install and how to make terrazzo. And look at this beautiful terrazzo. Next, please. So there are videos on their website. Sometimes you feel like, where am I going to learn about this? How am I going to teach the people? Sometimes you have to go all out, learn from online, learn from, the experts out there, whoever there are. And then also go out in the field, get your hands dirty. You could be pioneering this material. Next, please. In their comeback, actually. Last thing that I will present now will be concrete. I'm not saying we have to start making things with concrete, but how did we start concrete? And Chandigarh is not the start of concrete in India. It came much before it. One of the first example of concrete buildings that we see in India is around 1869, which just started with foundations in a building in Calcutta. Imported cement which used imported cement as well as reinforcement. Only the aggregate was Indian. So later, when Indian Cement Company started producing cement in 1914, it was in Gujarat. The factory started there. Initially, the reinforcement was imported, and then Tata Steel came in. Where the concrete all started for India. These are some examples of buildings that or advertisements that show when the concrete started in India, big time, for masses, basically. Aruna, can you go back to the next previous one, please? This example is from 1950s, actually, this building. This is a magazine journal. And there were a lot of examples that were showing, people advertising was going on, and people started to forget about the traditional materials that we were using, and they wanted to explore and experiment. Fair enough, everybody has to do it. But I will ask some questions now. Next, please. And like lime or like lime made products, buildings, lime for concrete, you'll have to use some kind of waterproofing also, because it's not that kind of a forgiving material. It doesn't breathe as much. So then these layers of waterproofing started to come in. These are all synthetic materials, maybe using cement as a base, but alkathene and other, these are all factory made. Next, please. Then if you were using concrete buildings, then you also knew that they were going to become very, very hot, and then the air conditioning started to come in, and obviously we're increasing the cost of the building as well. Now, 1 second, just 1 second. Yeah. So what concrete is doing is it's heating up your buildings, or maybe cooling it too much, and then you're going to need some kind of heating or cooling for the buildings as well. These are some of the ads from 1915s showing the use of concrete, use of waterproofing material, and also use of air conditioning. Next, please. 1950s is a big time use of concrete, with foreign architects coming in into India. They were invited, and a lot of Indians actually interned with them and learned with them. So, concrete was a big, big material, especially right after independence. I'm sure we all know this. Mill owners in that building is Mill Owners. Thank you, Aruna. Mill Owners Association building in Ahmedabad. The next one is the Corbusier Museum. But when Corbusier or other architects were using concrete as the building material, how much study did they put in to the local climate and local conditions, and how much was the concrete evaluated around that time? Did they know 50 years from now this is how the performance is going to be? Did anyone evaluate? I mean, I'm still trying to find papers on that. But that's fair, new material comes in and you want to use it, and you want to actually experiment with it as well. Next, please. I just want to, at this point, I just want all of us to think about, are we having a very difficult time with traditional materials really? And are we really going to just only use concrete? Next, please. Actually, materials do deteriorate. Traditional materials will deteriorate. Concrete will also deteriorate. And I do have some very, very good examples later, to show you that every material will deteriorate. But you will see cracks, you will see bulging, you will see spalling. Not the bricks only, but any other material as well, where the top layer sort of just starts to coming off. Efflorescence, biogrowth, loose mortar. But what are these problems actually showing you? Next slide, please. There are issues with materials, and they start to age. So aging is very, very big thing. Next slide, please. This is an example of a building from Allahabad. It's called the Muir College, and this is the topmost layer of the building, and terracing actually, and it's lasted for about 200 years plus. And now, with the lack of maintenance and also the aging of this building, so materials age. What do you have to do is you have to actually go back and maintain them. And now the water is penetrating into the building because of the lime concrete finish that has been weathering over a period of time, and nobody has been looking after it. Water is starting to penetrate into the building. And you can see my hand right there. I'm trying to insert a key there, and just to make sure, how deep is the, detachment. Next slide. We do not look after our buildings very well. Traditional materials, it's not the fault of the material. It could be a contemporary building as well. Next slide. This is also Muir College, actually, the image right here on the screen. It shows that the gutters are completely filled with debris, and then there is plant growth. And when you go inside the building and you say, well, there is water seepage, building purana ho gaya, it doesn't work very well. The building has worked for 200 plus years. What else do you want from the building? You are not taking care of the building. So it's not about the traditional material. It's not about the lime building, or it's not about the know-how. We still have the know-how, and people are getting trained. Next, please. We sometimes just forget about, we make the building and we forget about, what will happen, how will the client use it, and what they're supposed to do every month, every few months, or every years. How many times do they have to paint the buildings? How many times do they have to repoint the buildings? So it all comes down to maintenance. Somebody over here just forgot to clean the gutters, and there's a bird nest right there, and obviously doesn't let the water go down the right way, and it will start seeping all around the joints. Next, please. Brick building, because right now I was all gaga about the brick buildings, but brick does also have some issues. But again, on the left is the quality of the brick, efflorescence, which is the deposit of the salts on the building. It only happens when the building is not of good, the bricks are not of good quality. The water that has been used to construct the brick is not, maybe has salts. So that means you have to make the choice very clearly, not use a B grade brick or a C grade brick. So it's not about brick, it's also about the choice that you're making. On the right shows the spalling of the brick. There are very technical reasons for that, so that's not for this presentation. Below, where the image on the bottom shows a little bit of crack, and it's not very severe. It's also because the building hasn't been pointed very well in the past. Next, please. And mostly, I think, apart from the lack of maintenance of the traditional materials, and also aging of the material, there are design flaws, or sometimes we try to over design some buildings. Next, please. This is a building in Bharatpur. It's the Moti Mahal Palace. That's where the king lives. And Taj Hotels were going to convert it into a hotel. I don't think whether it got through or not. Nimish Patel was the architect. I was helping do the conditions assessment for this building. There was a lot of seepage below from the inside. So we had to go up and look at the terrace. The terrace was lime concrete, and obviously it weathered with time. It had to be renovated or redone. What happened was, instead of redoing it, somebody tried to put these tiles on top and thought, this will take care of everything. But sometimes it doesn't. And then if that didn't work, they tried to put on the metal sheeting on top. And look how temporary and tacky that is. And the water still didn't keep coming. Then water still did not stop from coming inside the building. So these are the temporary solutions we provide. We design, we over design, and we don't look at the actual basic problem of the building. Next, please. This is a building in Haridwar. It's a guest house it's a dark bungalow built during the British period. And a new flooring was done right outside the building. But the designer or the architect or the contractor just forgot, where the outlet of the water is going to go through. And now the tiles are all facing problems because the water can't get out of the building. Designing, please think about when you design or work with these materials. It's not materials' fault. It's actually our fault to some extent. The buildings or the materials or the techniques have been time tested. So we, the users or the creators, have to think about how we are putting them in use. Next, please. The same building in Haridwar, right at the bank of Ganges, actually. And you see the water spouts were added later. It had very interesting water spouts, but somebody tried to actually make changes to this building. And this water spouts actually put all the splash on the base of the building, and the base of the building is getting completely spoiled. And then they are complaining, "Ye building bahut purana ho gaya hai, isme bahut pani aa jata hai." Pani kyun aata hai? Because you have done something in the past which is actually messing with the original build fabric of this building. It's not, I wouldn't necessarily call it a very, very significant piece of heritage building, but it's something in use, where the people or the guests go and stay. And nobody likes to live in, moist buildings or stay in buildings where there is algae or, those very moist smells. So it's basically the design factor that comes in here. Next, please. So you may dismiss lime, you may dismiss wood, you may say, okay, this is not working out, that is not working out, but concrete is great, I'm going to use concrete. But really, has concrete been evaluated? It was, I think it was only invented in 1800s. and we are in 2020 now, and the oldest building in India also. Next, please. So, one of the oldest buildings that we have here, when Le Corbusier came into picture in India and was invited, this is the Corbusier Museum again that I just showed you slides of. The front facade looks beautiful, but when you go up close and personal, you see that there are damages to this material as well. And it causes excessive heating inside the building. He did try some very interesting passive cooling methods in the building, but with time, those don't last. So is concrete flawless? Do we not have problems with concrete? Do we even know how to repair these with traditional materials? We still have the know-how, but with this, are we equipped with the repair methods? Next, please. There is the same building. There is more damage, on the bottom of this rainwater pipe. That is a very, very beautiful design element of this building. Next one, please. Concrete just falls in a very, very ugly manner, and then you start seeing all the reinforcements. And if you see in this picture, the concrete is sort of falling apart and all the reinforcement is showing up. And next, please. Yeah, but it's repairable. I'm not saying that concrete is, you're going to demolish the concrete building if it's not traditional. This is one example of a building in New York that I worked on, and it's Hall of Science. The building, the picture on the far left shows, the areas that were sort of coming apart because it's exposed, it's outside. And then it was all taken out and the repairs were made, the image on the extreme right. But eventually it did work out. It works out always. It's not like we can't handle concrete. Next, please. We can handle all materials because we invented them. Lately, there has been drive to save some concrete buildings, and under the Keeping It Modern grant by Getty Conservation Institute. Because, when initially the buildings started to fail, they thought these buildings will last forever. They started to fail and nobody knew the repair methods or how to put it back together, and how to make it last, and how to maintain it. Because even when I bring in Corbusier again here, when he was making the building, he was not evaluating what will happen in 2020 when I will go back, when Bhavna will go and look at this building and say, okay, this building has a lot of problems. Nobody foresees that, and you don't have a maintenance plan, and you haven't evaluated that material, maybe in a lab, taken a sample in the lab, run it through water absorption, run it through rains, run it through freeze-thaw cycles, and then see how it will actually withhold the test of time, whether it's a good material for exterior or interior. We have to do that, in the background. We can't just apply it. So these are the case studies, that I also use very often. And one of the projects, New York Hall of Science, is also listed in this book. And so if you have already made concrete buildings, there is a way to sort of repair them. Next, please. Some of the faculty, so I've spent about 20 plus years just exploring, because there are not enough publications sometimes in Indian context. So, we have to start from scratch, and we ask our seniors. We often go to Vibhuti also. We ask other experts, who are out there. But, younger faculty wants a quick sort of an answer. If I want to learn about this thing, where will I go? So, there are, so this revival is coming back in a big way, where Terrazzo is being revived. I didn't talk about lime at all, because that will take another 2 hours to just talk about lime. There are organizations which are completely, sort of giving their time to lime and revival. Kalakriti is one of them, and you can go actually learn about lime. There are workshops, and lime workers are also available now, not just in Rajasthan, in Delhi as well. People are beginning to get trained in these things, because these are also it's reviving the economy as well. Next, please. If you don't like Indian lime, you can go to Scottish Lime Center. There are really, really interesting workshops that are taking place there. And people are using it not just for conservation of the past buildings, but they're also using it for newer buildings. and it's working out really, really well. Next, please. In India, we are also experimenting with a lot of earthen architecture, like I mentioned, not just in Ladakh, but also in South India. Auroville is doing a lot of work with the earthen architecture and different ways of using it by using stabilized blocks and other ways. This is another institute there where you can go get trained. This is for the faculty. Then obviously, if the faculty is equipped, they are going to transfer or transmit the same knowledge or ideas to the students as well. Next, please. We can run it quickly. Hunar Shala is foundation. Many of our students have gone there, faculty have already gone there, but this is, again, I'm bringing it out so that we don't forget about it. This is a great place to be, learn, come back, and maybe do an elective here and explore it with your students. And I think we just need to be more experimental and not just say, "Wo to ho gaya, this is a material of past, it's a traditional material." How are you contributing is also very, very important. Next, please. Lots of workshops with artists, with institutions, training programs for very basic learners and for mid-level learners, for very advanced learners when you're actually putting a building together. Next, please. There is a center in Chennai also that will give you a very good idea of how, to put, like you can see, there's stone and earth already in use, sorry, fired bricks. Many more will be available, when you go there. Next, so you have to explore. There's a lot available out there, and we are only here to sort of push you in the right direction. We can't handhold you, and we can't be giving lectures all the time. So some things you have to just figure it out. I am sure Auroville Earth Center everybody knows about, and lots of training opportunities there as well. Please go ahead and actually explore. Next, please. Of course, if you're done with the training programs, there are many books available on vernacular traditions. This one on the right is it's a very good book, and Aishwarya Tipnis is a fellow conservation architect, where a lot of our students go and work. And I feel conservation architects are more into this because we've been just doing some digging into the past of our buildings, and we've been getting some learnings to share. So that's why this is very, very interesting book. And then other books are also available, internationally and domestically. Please explore those as well before you branch out and say, I'm going to work with traditional materials. So these are good starting points for you. Next, please. So this is actually the last slide, but I do want to spend some time here and also open this for a little bit of discussion from the faculty and people who want to explore this further. I always feel that when we take up a project or we are explaining anything to a student or clients, we don't give them options. We just go and say, okay, this is this building, these are the specifications, and we don't say, you could either use this or use that. These are your alternates, like we are doing today. I think it's very important that we explain to them the options, their benefits before deciding on a particular material or a technique. I hope all of you agree with this, and mostly what we do is we make a building and we just leave, like our job is done. We go to dinners with clients and we meet them and maybe go back once, in many years and say, oh yeah, this thing is having some problems. Do we ever leave a maintenance plan with them? We never tell them how to take care of the building, whether we have to paint every 7 years or let the building get molded. We have to paint the building every year. How often do we have to clean the drains? How often do we have to check the slope or redo the terracing? Only when they start to fail, then they start to look for a solution. So maybe having a maintenance plan kind of a thing that we could also use in our syllabus and learn to make these and also explain it to our students, right? Give them a care guide, because you care for your buildings, like you also want the clients or the users to use the buildings well. Please have a care plan for them. That's what we do in the conservation management plans that we do for heritage buildings. We leave with them a maintenance plan where they can actually take care of the building for maybe say a 6-month period, for an annual period, for things that they have to do for say every 5 years or so. So I think that is a very, very useful thing to do for taking care of buildings, and they will last, whether it's traditional or not traditional. Learn the new or forgotten skills and techniques. Just like I showed you some examples, there is a revival of traditional materials in a big way. And I think also last week we saw many architects who were actually talking about this. So go back and learn, go back and intern with these architects, read these materials, go for workshops. This is especially for the faculty. And then you can tell your students the same thing. They can go with you as well. Also, I think designing has to be less flawed. We can't and find solutions that fit to a certain climate, to a certain building type or a certain region. Don't apply the same thing to hills, to the plains, to everywhere that you're going. It's not about your signature, it's also about the signature of that particular place that you're, the context or the climate and the building materials. And always ask if you don't know. I always ask. There is no shame in asking. Ask your seniors, ask your juniors, ask your students, ask your parents, ask anyone. And do a lot of personal research. Spend time doing personal research. And if you're not doing that, then you're going to fail as a faculty or an architect also, because that is the basic of anything that you're doing. You really have to do your research before actually giving it out to the students. And if the course doesn't exist, like in Sushant, we've been talking about, we had this course called Materials, Techniques and Processes, where we were exploring materials, but we weren't doing very traditional materials. So we started an elective first, where we started to see how many takers there were, and it became very popular. Then, in the new syllabus that we created last year, Vibhuti knows about this. We created a subject specially known as the traditional building methods and materials and methods. So we are going a big way into it, and so some of you will be teaching it as well. So if there is not a course that is available in your institute, ask them to start it. Start with a basic elective, and then people will start to see the relevance of this kind of a elective or course, and then maybe they will incorporate it in their syllabus as well. And also, I'm almost at the last few points, let the students figure it out. Just give them things to do. Sometimes it helps a lot when you just say, try making something with earth. Try looking at the properties of these 3 types of bricks. One is Lakhori, one is modular, and one is what? Let them figure it out. Just give them things to play with. And then, they will come up with very interesting observations and maybe way forward also. And one thing I think very important here is that not to miss measure drawings ever. In the 5 years of BRs that we do, when we go back and learn documentation of older structures, settlements, heritage buildings, why are we doing this? This is only because we want to document what has happened in the past, and it sort of paves a way forward to whatever we are going to do in the future. Vernacular, go all the way, learn vernacular. Measure draw all the historic buildings that you possibly can, heritage buildings that you possibly can. Learn to make sections of these buildings, how these were put together. Only then your knowledge base will improve or increase. I think I've said enough for the day. I'm going to just stop here and would love to discuss or take questions, please. Thank you all.
Thanks, Bhavna. Very nice. There are some questions already in the chat box. People have started commenting. I'm just going to read the ones, a few out to you. So Himanshu has asked this twice, so I think I'll start with that. Material development always responds to mass requirement, speed of construction, and or details. The translation of techniques will be difficult in the current urban scenario of India, although it is exactly what is needed. What is your view on this?
Material development always want to master the speed of. Yes, I think I sort of agree with this. That's why concrete came in big time, because the timing needed to install it is very shorter. It's shorter than what a traditional building would be. But it's a give and take. It's like you weigh the pros and you weigh the cons. Would you like to be paying electricity bills for the rest of your life, which are so high because the building was built in concrete, and it doesn't it's not very sustainable. So you're always paying for electricity bills because of air conditioning. Of course the method is very quick, but what is the rush? Is there a rush really? Are we always in a rush to create buildings or to deliver to the project, deliver to the client? I think it's important to. Sorry, Himanshu. Yeah. Please go ahead. I know what you mean.
No,
I mean,
you continue. Maybe I'll add on later on.
okay. So, you know, I see all the high rises coming in, and all I'm saying is, instead of concrete blocks, maybe you could use brick, you know, just as much as you can. I'm not saying you don't use steel, because, you know, all the Amelias, Camellias, and all those apartments will not see the light of the day if, you know, the concrete or steel doesn't take place. But, you know, try to make your little change that you can, you know, because it will go a long way in making whatever we are doing more sustainable and more, it will last. And I think it will be thermally very, very helpful if we do this. You know, we are saving a lot of costs when we do this. So I mean, I'm not an expert. I'm not going to give that kind of an answer where it says, you know, you do this versus that. I'm only sharing some thoughts that I've been having for the past few years, and I do that with the students as well. But ultimately, it's your choice. But you have to be exposed to all these systems that exist, which we maybe not, which we don't do to the architecture students enough. So expose them, and then it's their choice. I don't know whether they make high rises with this or not, whether they make small houses or whether they make public buildings. Up to them.
The way I see is that you know, I mean, COVID-19 has really given us an example, has really given us a perspective that a lot of things can and move into a digital or an online platform. And the world over, they have realized it. And there is one person in principle from Israel, and he has started a university which has gone viral in last 1 year or maybe 2 years, and it is completely online. There is no campus person. There is no physical interaction per se, but students are yet happy. The faculty members who are teaching within the university, they are yet happy. So, and with this pandemic situation, it has given and opened up a platform where things will move online. So what the way I see is, in subsequent years, the typologies or the architecture that we are talking about will move out. There will be no need for office complexes. There will be no need for institutions or universities or larger campuses that we are really talking about. And there will be no need of various other typologies or functions that in the architecture institutions we keep on discussing about, hospitals and this and that. And subsequently, if these typologies are going to move out and things are going to move online, the only typology that we will be talking about is one, residential, second is the healthcare facilities, and third is the tourism. So these three areas will pitch in more and more in subsequent years. So if we are going to focus on this, I'm just sharing my thoughts here. It may happen, it may not happen. But in 10, 15 years down the line, or maybe 20, 30 years down the line, if these three areas are what we are looking into, then the whole idea of materials, construction, speed, development will get lowered down, and the floor height restriction that we are looking at will be maybe G+3, G+4, and that the idea of high rise will disappear. So in that process, because you know, so that idea where a lot of functions are not required or typologies are not required, so the land will become vacant. On those vacant land, we can have housing. There's no need for high-rise towers, and everything can go horizontal, and people will be more happier when the residential complexes goes horizontal, more like a neighborhood. So in that process, when the construction is just going to get limited to 3 floors or 4 floors or maybe 5 floors, then in that respect, will this gain popularity? So my understanding, my question or my viewpoint here is that in next 15 years, the modern technology came from traditional knowledge system. We have forgotten that system, and now we are going back into the traditional knowledge system. So in next 15, 20 years, do you think that this, when all the typologies and everything will be out, this kind of ideology will prevail of having a sustainable approach, and this kind of technology will prevail rather than modern technologies? What is the view on that?
My view on that is that we have to sort of let it, you know, first of all, we have to just wait it out, you know, and figure this out when the, So all these are just discussions right now. And when the ground reality actually hits us, when we actually start, because very soon the construction will start and, new designs will start to take place. I think then we'll have to figure out, we'll have to put in some hours of research into that as well. We can't just be, obviously, like what you're saying, the technology will change a little bit, but I don't think we are going to totally dismiss the traditional materials which you make. So I think some users, and these things will always find use, Himanshu, no matter COVID or after that. Maybe the designing will change a little bit, but that's
No,
our job,
rather,
right? The architect's job
rather,
to design
rather
I
and
think
my
that's an interesting viewpoint Himanshu's making.
yeah.
because
And
rather my take
so,
would be
yeah,
that the modern technology on which we are so much relying, and last 3-4 days we've been saying about how the technology is changing, and I myself talked about robotics and 3D drones and 3D printing and everything. So
Yes.
technology is there, but if this idea gets seeped into the society or within the architecture fraternity, then the discussion point would be that modern technology has no value or has no standing position in the construction industry, and everybody is then prevailing onto the traditional style knowledge, and that will be the larger goal and aim of everybody, because the
very
functions and the
interesting.
typologies are
Yeah,
vanishing. They are vanishing,
yeah,
and only
Absolutely.
three, four typologies
very interesting,
are
Himanshu.
being placed. So we don't need modern technology, and we can go back to the traditional style. That's the take.
No, it really
Absolutely,
makes us think,
absolutely.
I think very, very valid point, and we'll have to, unwrap it as it comes, because every day we are thinking about, how we'll be placing the doors, where the sanitizer will come, what are we not going to touch, and where we are going to use our elbows to open the door, or where it will be automated. Similarly, I think we are going to have to do the same exercise with the building materials also, Himanshu. What
Okay.
material will be
Yeah.
more lasting, where we can do more washing, where we can apply more sanitizers, or, I don't know. But these are the things
Yeah,
that we
we
need more
are
discussion.
running short on
Absolutely.
time.
Yes.
Sorry to barge in.
Overshot
I'm just
time,
like,
but before that, I think we should just ask if our
yeah,
participants have any questions.
yeah, no. Yeah, that's what I just wanted to read out those.
Sorry,
I
Thanks,
know
Himanshu.
that
Bhavna.
Raji Munkar is already here. Welcome, Raji, but we'll just take 5 more minutes. Dr. S.P. Anchuri is talking about the fact that it was an excellent presentation, Bhavna, and the fact that some of the aspects in terms of rehabilitation of buildings are neglected, and this is a point that we as faculty need to take care of, and the students can know about when the structure requires repair, restoration, reconstruction, or deconstruction, as there is a need and expertise throughout. So, so there it can be
Aruna,
taken up as a profession.
right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
So I also feel, that's what I've been talking about, maintenance of buildings, and the right design and the maintenance. Sometimes you may not never need that expert during your lifetime or the building's lifetime if you're maintaining it well. But yeah, when it comes to severe problems and rehabilitation or structural issues, then you have to contact people like us actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe there'll be more of your
Yes,
people like
and
you.
that's why we are
Yeah.
training the students in the Built Heritage course. Also, BR, electives. We are trying to do this. How to handle these materials. Absolutely.
Yeah, and Saloni and Gauri are talking about Gauri Vyavare. They're talking about, what we are doing is using potable water in construction, and the fact that the quality of material that we are talking about. And Gauri has raised a very interesting point, that she said masons laying IPS and red oxide in Vada floorings in Alibag using distillery water for mixing and curing.
Otherwise,
know,
it'll crack very badly, and it will start to disintegrate. Yes, absolutely. So it's not about the material going bad. It's not the right way that we are installing them or using them. That's not how our forefathers did it. They used to obviously have a better source of water, or some aggregates were better. So if you're using shortcuts, then obviously buildings will fail. Then it's not about traditional building failing. It's about your building failing, your design or your materials failing.
in fact, there's one more thing that you've raised, and Tanvi is saying care guide is a great solution suggested, not just for clients, for students.
Yes.
And lots of appreciation, Bhavna, your way. People will new insights into Lakhori bricks. People will actually, I think what you really aptly put out there is the fact that the universe of our construction technology is not limited the way we are treating it in our syllabus, and that we need to go beyond that. So Alpi, Srijani said about Lakhori bricks, and yeah, she's going to definitely
Srijani, we
fall in
have
love with
papers,
yours and material.
papers published on Lakhori. Please do read them, because that was the first time, something on Lakhori sort of got published, and I'm thankful for, SSA, letting me work on that. So please do read. I will share.
Sure, do.
And yeah, quickly,
Bamboo,
sorry, I
Alpi, I
didn't hear.
don't know too much about bamboo actually, so I will not comment on bamboo as much. That's why I, was a little bit apprehensive of showing things that I'm not very, aware of and needed more research. So I'm sorry about that. No bamboo my way. It's
All right, and Preeta quickly has talked about maintaining the building made with traditional materials as a valid thing, how to reduce maintenance period for the economically weaker. So there are issues definitely, and we are talking about improving their social status or anything, but not because of maintenance cost and interval of maintenance required traditionally more. So people can't. There are some issues
So
here that
yes.
Preeta has raised.
Hello.
Yeah,
Hello?
yeah.
Yes, but then one has to, I'm not saying, I'm not actually promoting it for the masses also, but, just trying to be more sensitive on who users can be, so when you're actually, when Preeta, for example, if you're looking at a client who can, who is a certain social status or economic class, then you can say, this is the right material for you because it will require lesser maintenance, or do a combination of 2 or 3 materials. So that's why I'm not saying just go all out and make a earthen building which we will never be able to maintain or sustain. So
No,
make a combination in that case.
No, Bhavna, my question is like, generally people, when you go to this economically weaker place, like, fisherman settlement or the tribal settlement, they prefer to use thatched roof or like, mud brick walls because they know the benefit, they have the skill set and they prefer to do that. But for them, this requires maintenance, and they have moved from that to asbestos sheets or the concrete roof and brick walls, and they criticize that newer construction. They say our kids are falling ill, they are catching like getting diseases like asthma, cancer and all that, but still they prefer to go with this because that maintenance is like 7 years, they just have to plaster or little bit of repair, whereas when they do with thatched roof, which requires after every rain they need to change, which costs like approximately
Money. Yeah. It is sort of high maintenance. That's what you're saying. Yeah. I do
So how do
understand.
we solve that? So whatever techniques you're saying, everything, do we have some research institutes or some places where they're working on it? I think that is what is going to solve these issues also. Why
Right.
it is not so popular, because we don't know how to maintain it, low cost maintenance or reducing the frequency of the maintenance, 6 months or 1 year or 3 years. Like, can we, expand that lifespan of this material or this construction
So,
techniques?
I actually forgot to give Aruna this final presentation, but I'll just show you one thing very quickly. I was working in a village in Raghurajpur in 2004, and this whole village has had thatched roofs. So because, we were making some public buildings there, so I'm not only saying things, I also did it in the past. This is a village where laterite block was very, very common. Can you see my presentation?
Yeah.
So we use these, and instead of thatch, we went in for tiles then, which required lesser maintenance. So you just brought out the same question, and the entire village uses thatch, but they are also, some wanted to leave it the way it was, and for public buildings, which we didn't know who would be actually taking care of these, we went in for this. And we still use laterite. That was the common building material there. So, I think modifications, more research has needed. I mean, I don't have any direct answers for that. As you know, I'm also struggling as you are.
Sorry, Bhavna. I mean, before we move on, sorry, Rajiv. One question, I think, bringing it back to the purpose of this program in terms of a faculty training, faculty development program. In terms of the pedagogy aspect, you did mention a couple of tools, architectural tools. You did mention let them make sections.
Yes.
And section is a very important tool to understand the making of these older structures, right? And you did mention one tool to learn through is measure drawing.
Absolutely.
Am I getting it right? And is there anything else that we should? And when you talk about sections, what do you actually mean? Is it external wall sections? Is it the
Absolutely. I also mean roofing section as much as you can. You can go investigate. Piyush Das is a student of mine who's also a faculty now. He calls, when I go and investigate buildings, he used to call it bhavnification of buildings, because I used to start digging and I'm taking out samples. But I think the idea is basically to get to know how these things are put together. So I am talking about wall sections as well as the roofing sections, where the joints actually take place. So basically go document one small building, maybe if you're a group of students, do a larger building, put in some time in documentation of these maybe vernacular and heritage both, like scales could be different and the significance could be different. Definitely do that. That was one thing. And also I think maintenance care guide, how to handle these materials is very important. Do that as well.
So,
Where did you
like
write
you
it?
said, yeah, Preeta, yeah. So, anything else? I think we will. There are lots of compliments and appreciation, Bhavna, from Abhimanyu, Puneet,
Thank you. Thank you.
Naveen. Yeah, and a very informative presentation. Yeah, and I think the teaching methods that we as faculty need to pursue. There are a couple of very important takeaways, and thanks a lot, Bhavna, for your presentation and very extensive presentation. In fact, you took us through a lot of materials, and that was fabulous.
And
Thank you. Thank you.
Basically, Bhavna, for a lot of references and resource, collection that you have given us. The collection of materials.
Yeah, that's
Anytime.
very generous. That's very generous of you, and I hope all our participants and also whoever is attending can make use of that. Thanks a lot. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
So we'll go on. We are very, very sorry, Rajiv Lunkar, founder, director,